you a spotlight thief? You are. You're a spotlight thief. Hello plant pals and welcome to another video. My name is Kenna and I'm so excited to have you here with me today. Today we are going to be going through a very special unboxing. So if you guys watch Sloan's Common Ground here on YouTube, I do also watch her channel. I really enjoy it. I think she's super sweet. And she lives up in one of the I states. I want to say Illinois, Iowa, maybe Indiana. I cannot keep them straight. I apologize. But up in one of those I states, there is a really awesome specialty plant shop called The Plant Dealer. I have followed them online for quite some time now. I do follow them on like Instagram, and they have a subscription box service. So I was actually very kindly gifted a subscription box service by my father for this past Christmas, and I will be getting some of the Plant Dealer subscription boxes for the next several months, and I am so excited. So that's what I'll be unboxing with you guys today. If you like this kind of video, go ahead and leave me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below if you would ever consider a plant subscription box, and let's get into it. Okay, so I do actually have somewhere to be after this, but I'm gonna try to get through this fairly quickly while giving all of my new plants their time. This box did actually come in yesterday evening, but I didn't want to unbox it in the dark for you guys. I don't know if you guys would mind that. I just feel like the light isn't nearly as good, and you won't get to see kind of what I'm unboxing. So I didn't want to compromise the quality of the video because I'm sure there's some really exciting plants in here. So this is the box. It looks like it's packed really nicely, which I'm very happy about. I always worry. Okay, so they did include, oh, how awesome. And it's Iowa. Iowa is the I state. But they did include this little kind of info sheet, just with kind of some information about plants and how to care for them, just in general. Awesome. How cool. I really like this. And this is their information if any of you guys are interested. Like I said, I definitely do recommend checking them out on Instagram. They have some really awesome stuff. And I actually watched Sloan unbox some of her Plant Dealer subscription boxes. And that's kind of what got me into specifically the Plant Dealers. I know that like Hertz has some, and like maybe some other subscription services, but the Plant Dealers look like the best for more uncommon plant collectors. And I don't know if you guys can hear me over the crinkling of this paper. It is super loud, but I'm trying to very carefully rip into this package. I have no patience. Oh my goodness. Okay, so it looks like I got 2 plants here. And I think, no, they didn't. Okay, let me see. So for the Plant Dealer specifically, they have a list that they release every month where you can go through and choose either plants that you already own or the plants that you specifically want off their list. So I did go through and do that earlier this month, and maybe I'll show you guys what that looks like at some point. But I did go through and choose plants that I was interested in, as well as plants that I wasn't interested in. I left those off of my list. And I did also choose like rooted plants specifically. I might do a month where I do like maybe more cuttings and things like that. I think you get more variety that way. But I'm just a little hesitant about cuttings because I know that I would be so sad if I lost a plant that I really wanted that was a cutting. So I decided for the first time I wanted to just go through and do like fully rooted plants. just on the off chance that, you know, anything happened to the package, but it does look like it arrived really well, and their packaging, you know, is really nicely done. So maybe I'll have more faith sometime in the future about a cutting box. All right. I can see leaves, but I don't know what it is yet. Okay, so it's a Scindapsus Jade Satin. All right. Ooh, how pretty. So I have one Scindapsus right now. Actually, I showed it in my most recent video. And it is not particularly happy with me. Just because I think it has too much light right now, but it's doing okay. It's still alive. So this is a different variety of Scindapsus. This is the Scindapsus Jade Satin. So this one has a lot more green in it and a lot less of that silvery splashing that like the Scindapsus Pictus is known for. I don't want to kind of unwrap it all the way because I don't want soil to get everywhere, but it looks like it's in really nice shape, and these leaves are so pretty. So I'm really excited about that. I previously, you know, have kind of stayed away from purchasing more Scindapsus because the common ones are, you know, really easy to find, and then the uncommon ones are usually really expensive. I think I actually included one in my wish list video. It was the, like, I want to say Borneo, maybe Scindapsus Borneo dark form, and I'm still very, very interested in that plant, but like I said, it can get really expensive, and I'm trying to hold off on purchasing a ton of expensive plants right now, just for my own wallet's benefit. But I will say this kind of satisfies the plant urge, having plants arrive, you know, in a subscription box. And not only that, ooh, okay. Not only that, I already know what this one is, sorry, but it's also kind of like a surprise, and I really do love surprises. So, well, it depends. I like most surprises. Sometimes surprises cause me to be anxious if I know they're coming, like, hey, I got you something for your birthday, but I can't tell you what it is. Those drive me nuts. But like these kind of surprises, like getting, you know, a subscription box surprise is really cool. So I am happy about that. All right, so I did see the label for this one too. This is a Monstera Adansonii mint. Okay, so this looks, so I do actually have an Adansonii, which I also showed in my most recent video. So there seems to be a theme here. The Monstera Adansonii that I have is doing really well. You know, it doesn't seem to be unhappy, which is always a bonus. And this is just the mint form. It looks like it may be a little bit of a narrower form as well. Mine is pretty wide and, you know, has a lot of kind of leaf space between fenestrations, but this one seems to be very extra holy and narrow. So this is what it looks like. It does have some very slight variegation over here, it looks like, and I believe the mint variegation, there we go, is kind of what gives it the mint name. So it is a green on green form of variegation versus like a white or a yellow variegation. And I've seen a couple of these, but I'm not exactly sure, you know, what they're supposed to look like. So I'm really excited to grow this one out. I'm trying to be careful to not get soil all over the place. But given that there's a new leaf coming in, I want to see what it looks like. And these, again, were wrapped so well. Like, look at all of this fluff. I love how carefully they packaged these. That way, you know, they would arrive in good shape, even if they got banged around. And I think you guys can probably see in maybe like the thumbnail of this video, but the box itself, like, got a little banged around. Not like too terribly, but I was slightly concerned if there were any, you know, leaves that were close to that edge that they were gonna get maybe a little bit bent up. But these arrived in pretty much perfect shape, which I'm really excited about. Okay, I know I said I wasn't going to try to unwrap this entirely because there's soil, but I'm going to continue unwrapping it. Just because I want to see, I want to make sure that everything looks good. And I don't know, kind of obviously, what the watering has been like for this plant. So I want to make sure that The watering's good. Yeah, it's a little damp, that's good. And actually their soil is really nice. I'll show you guys when I get a better view of it. But it looks like it's really like loose and chunky, just the way most epiphytes really enjoy it, or most aeroids really enjoy it. So that's really good. I'm gonna try to isolate the mess. There we go. Okay. That is so cool. I love that. Okay, so this is their soil mix. Like I said, it is a little bit chunky. It looks like has maybe some bark or coir chips in there, some perlite, of course. And it looks pretty good. Like I said, a little bit moist, so I'm not gonna mess with that. That's so exciting though. I'm so happy to have this in my collection. I actually don't have any variegated Monstera in my collection right now. I know a lot of people love the Albo, love the Thai, love the like Monstera, Standeliana Albo, and just like other forms of variegated Monstera. I don't know. I've always loved the Albo, but when I found out how expensive it was like early on, I think that kind of killed my love for it. So I haven't been, you know, trying to track one down or purchase one. Just because it, you know, it is pretty expensive, and there are other plants that maybe I would enjoy a little bit more. And at this point, I do think the Albo is maybe a little bit overrated. And I know that I'm not the only one that holds that opinion, but I feel like I still see, you know, Monstera, Albo, and Thai all over the place, like on the purge pages. And I'm just not interested in spending that much money on them. Let me know if you guys would like to see like maybe plants that I think are overrated type video. I would kind of like to film one of those, I think, because I do have some opinions for sure on some overrated plants. Alrighty. Just gonna pull the fluff away from this one too. And this one looks like it's in the same soil mix, still a little bit damp as well, so that's really awesome news. Won't need a water for a little while. And this one I'm gonna be very careful to put in a well-lit but not super brightly lit place. Unlike my other Scindapsus, I don't want it to be unhappy with me. There's actually 4 leaves on this cutting, so I think one was probably covered by the fluff. Really, I really like their soil. I don't know if this is just a me thing or if other, you know, plant people do this too. But when I get plants in and they have really nice soil, like I think about how I could kind of do the same thing. And I think that the addition of coir chips would be maybe some, I do put bark in there, but I think just the coir chips themselves might be beneficial to maybe my own soil mix. So I have been considering playing around with that idea. And I know that like they come in bricks for like reptiles and things like that. So I'm thinking about it. My soil mix right now is pretty basic. It is just perlite, orchid bark, but like the orchid bark mix with charcoal and perlite, and I feel like there's something else in there as well, but it's just very chunky, you know, and orchids really like it. So do my aeroids. And then I use just a plain old bagged soil from just the big box store. So nothing is super fancy by any means, but I think the coir would maybe add just a little bit more fluff to my mix, if that makes sense. If you guys are plant people, you probably know what I'm talking about. But here is my Jade Satin Scindapsus. And again, you can see it has those 4 leaves. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's just really pretty. Normally, you know, the green form is going to be the most common form of any plant, usually, like pothos green form, Monstera green form. This is, I feel like the green form of the Scindapsus, but I just don't have it. I have the Pictus, which I feel like is the one I see more often. So I am really excited about this one. And like I said, I'm going to try to put it somewhere where it will be happy, not too much light. Though I am going to isolate these just for a little bit. I don't want to risk spreading any pests in my collection, though these look really healthy. Aside from this one deformed leaf, but honestly, all sorts of things can cause that. So I'm not super worried. And I don't see anything suspicious or unusual on the leaves at all. Let me just check the underside of this one. Yeah, I don't see anything suspicious or unusual, but isolate until there's no debate is kind of the motto for me when it comes to pests these days. because I do not want to spread any sort of pests into my collection. So I'm gonna go ahead and probably pop these somewhere where hopefully they will be very happy. I probably will try to film, some sort of process for you guys just about these, maybe, where I place them or their acclimation. I probably won't be able to get to it today though. So I'm gonna pop these somewhere in the meantime and then pop in a next clip. All right, plant pals, it has been about a week since I got in my new plants from the plant dealer, and they've settled in pretty well. I haven't noticed any issues, no browning, no pests or anything like that. And it is getting up to the point where I'm going to need to water them and place them somewhere. You should always quarantine your plants if possible. However, I have a lot of plants all over my house. I don't really have enough space to quarantine. So my quarantine actually tends to be my kitchen counter, and it's not really well lit, so it's not ideal for plants. And since I know the plant dealer is a very reputable shop and I haven't noticed any issues, I am comfortable with putting these into my collection and using my normal systemic on them to be sure that, anything residual is gone. But I wanted to talk about how I choose where I'm gonna put my new plants and what I do with new plants. So as you know, if you're familiar with the plant dealer boxes, the plants that you get are actually usually a total surprise. I wasn't expecting either of these plants. I wasn't, looking for either of these plants necessarily. That's not to say that I'm not happy with them. I am delighted. However, I wasn't prepared, I guess you could say, for these plants. So I want to talk today about some of the things that I look for and kind of research a bit when I'm getting new plants, and just kind of methods that you might want to look out for also when placing your new plants into your collection. So the first thing I did, I actually use the Planta app. I love the Planta app. It's fantastic. I use it to keep track of all of my plants, all of my collection. And it's really nice. You can take photos, things like that. Not sponsored, I just really enjoy it. So I did look in the Planta app. They have some information, just kind of generalized about plants and lighting and watering and all of that. So that's usually my first place that I look. So the first place that I looked was Planta for the Scindapsus, and it recommended part sun, normal humidity, and to water when the top is dry. So to me, part sun means it will get direct sun throughout the day. However, it's probably going to be like morning sun or evening sun, so nothing too harsh. Normal humidity obviously is household humidity to me. Mine is pretty good, especially in the plant room. It's a little bit higher. I do use a humidifier now, and I've seen some improvement in my humidity with that. And for most air weights, really, I would water when the top inch or so of soil is dry. Depending on how large the pot is. I do use a soil moisture meter and I really enjoy it. It simplifies my life quite a bit. However, it's just a kind of good rule of thumb to keep in mind. If the top of the soil is dry, when you stick your finger down in it, it might be time to water. For the Adansonii, the recommendation from Planta was part sun, high humidity, and to water when the top of the soil is dry. So again, part sun, meaning probably morning or evening sun might hit it, but it's not going to be directly in full sun all day long. Obviously, high humidity also, that's a little bit different depending on who you ask. So it's not super specific. That is kind of my one gripe with Planta. It's not very specific about what your plant needs. It just is very generalized. So to me, high humidity is 65, 70-ish%. That is pretty high for household humidity, so it is hard to maintain at times. But that's a pretty good humidity for most aeroids, and philodendrons especially tend to love it in my room here, as you guys can see. And again, watering when the top of the soil is dry. Stick your finger down in it, make sure that the top inch or so is dry, and that's when you would want to water. Currently, both plants are potted in a pretty light mix, very cocoa coir heavy. So it's very light, very airy. It's a little bit harder to tell when that soil is dry, so you just have to be careful. So the next source that I looked at, none of the other sources, by the way, are shared, so that Planta app was just the one that had both of them in there. The next source that I looked at was for the Scindapsus, and it recommended bright and direct light, well draining soil, with caution for overwatering, and again, normal humidity. So bright and direct to me is different than part sun. I know it's kind of a generalized term. It's not something that's really defined, but to me, bright and direct means it is going to get bright light all day long, but there is no direct sun hitting this plant. So if there's a grow light, it's going to be maybe a couple feet back. If there is a window, like a west facing or south facing window, it's going to have either filtered light or it's going to be back from the window a bit. It's not getting direct sun on this plant at any point. And again, well draining soil, cocoa coir heavy, bark heavy, lots of perlite. That's a really great soil for most aeroids. It did though say that overwatering is a big issue with the Scindapsus. The Scindapsus is prone to root rot, so you do want to be careful of that. And just make sure, like I said, that you're checking that soil to make sure that it is completely dry for the top inch or so before watering. And again, normal humidity. So humidity is not something that I'm concerned about with this plant. And I feel like that is, a good kind of generalized hallmark for a lot of plants is normal humidity. So I like that. I thought that was pretty good information. That was from thespruce.com. I apologize. I don't think I mentioned it. I did actually just Google search. So my Google search turned up obviously a few pages. I Googled the name of the plant and care, and it brought up quite a few articles and things like that of that nature. The spruce, however, was the first one to pop up. The second one that popped up for the Scindapsus was by BrittanyGoldwyn.com. I am not familiar with either of these websites. However, like I said, they were among the top recommendations when I Googled, so that's what I clicked on to kind of check it out. So by Brittany Goldwyn recommended bright and direct light, which again, as we addressed, seems to be a pretty good generalized light for most aeroids. It is kind of what I default to for most of my plants, and I think the Scindapsus likely will be pretty happy there. Again, it said well-draining soil, underwatering is actually okay with this plant. They recommended, being very cautious because overwatering is a kind of thing that can happen really easily with the finer root system. So they actually said that underwatering is fine with this plant. And in my personal experience with my Scindapsus, when it does get a little bit dry and is really thirsty, the leaves kind of curl a little bit. So you can really see also when this plant is thirsty, and that would be when I personally would give it some water. This one, however, the humidity requirement was a little bit different. Instead of saying just normal humidity, they did say humidity over 50%, which for me, again, is fine. That's not something that I really struggle with here in my home. However, some people might have an issue with that. Normal humidity for a household is probably around 40-ish% depending on where you live. So 50 is a little bit higher. It might take some effort to maintain. Again, they were the only ones who said that, so take that as you will, but those are the kind of things that I pay attention to when it comes to checking for requirements for new plant. Okay, so moving on to the Adansonii. The Adansonii, I again just Googled Monstera, Adansonii mint, and care, and got quite a few articles that popped up. The first one was from soilseedandgarden.com. Again, I am not familiar with this website. It is just one of the first results on Google. And this website actually recommended bright and direct light for the Adansonii. Again, that is versus the Planta recommendation of part sun. So we see a little bit of difference there, a little bit of more defined what this plant is looking for. The second recommendation that Soil Seed and Garden had for the Adansonii was to have 60% or higher humidity. So that is, again, to me a little bit more useful than just saying high humidity, because I want to know specifically what type of humidity we're looking at. 60% or higher is quite high for an indoor humidity. Some people might not actually be able to hit that mark. So that is really important information to know, at least in my mind, when it comes to humidity for plants. So the Adansonii does have higher humidity requirements at about 60%. They also said that it was sensitive to overwatering. So again, water when the top is dry and not before. They, I believe, also recommended a well-draining mix, something with a lot of perlite and a kind of chunky bark in it, which is my preference anyways. As a, mostly aeroid plant parent, I have a lot of well-draining chunky soil mixes. So that is from Soil Seed and Garden. The next one I looked at was plantophiles.com. Again, not familiar with this website, but it was one of the first recommendations that popped up. And they actually were a little bit more specific in the lighting requirement for the Adansonii, which I thought was very interesting. So they said bright indirect light, or a little bit higher actually. So somewhere that doesn't receive direct sun, though they did say, they cautioned that direct light will actually burn the leaves. However, more light is better for the Adansonii, they said, just not direct light. So that was really good information for me, especially, I will throw in a picture here, that way you guys can have a reference. But the Adansonii is a variegated plant, or this one anyways, the one that I have, the mint version, is a variegated plant. And to keep that variegation, a lot of plants do kind of need a little bit different things. Most variegated plants do have two specific needs to keep their variegation going. The first is going to be warmth. Not all variegated plants rely as heavily on warmth, but plants like the Jose Bueno and the Perizo Verde typically do require warmth in order to keep their variegation nice and, keeping that variegation going. They also require a lot of light. So if you think about it, most plants that are variegated have reduced chlorophyll in certain areas. So because of that, that plant is going to get less energy when light is hitting its leaves than it might if it was a fully green plant. Because of that, it is important that that plant has adequate light. Otherwise, it will stop putting out variegation simply as a measure of self-preservation. So that is something else that is really important to note. And I really appreciated how specific they were about that lighting need. So bright indirect, no direct light or it will burn, but lots of bright light, which again, that to me, I'm probably gonna end up putting this plant under a grow light. I do have kind of a spot in mind, but I think a grow light is gonna be able to maintain that lighting need for this plant. So they also said for the humidity, 60 to 80% humidity. That is quite a lot of humidity. Again, not all households can hit that. A lot of people in this hobby do have greenhouse cabinets, things of that nature, and those will definitely hit that humidity a little bit easier. Currently, I do not have a greenhouse cabinet. I do have a greenhouse, but I do have a little bit of trouble keeping humidity in there right now as well. So for me, that means this plant is going to be in my house, in my household humidity, and I'm just going to need to keep a really close eye on my general humidity in the room to make sure that this plant is getting the humidity that it needs. And again, they did say that this plant needs well-draining soil, sensitive to overwatering and root rot issues, as well as fungal issues. And the top 2 inches of the soil should be dry before watering. And to me, again, that just means, stick your knuckle down in there, make sure that that soil is dry before you're giving it a water. Both of these came in a really beautiful soil mix. The plant dealer has a beautiful soil mix from what I can tell so far. And I'm really excited to have these plants, and they seem like they're gonna be doing well in the mix they're in. And actually, I'm kind of inspired by this mix to purchase cocoa coir and add that to more of my mixes rather than just the orchid bark. So we'll see in the future if I do end up doing that. But that is kind of what I look at personally when I am placing a plant. I look at the general needs as far as humidity, watering, light go. And then I personally do fertilize my collection with every watering. It's typically a diluted fertilizer. So half strength, quarter strength, not anything near what they would typically recommend for a full fertilizing. So that's not really something I'm as concerned about, but the soil, the water, the lights, all of that, that's something that, I need to be cautious of as a plant parent, because those are things that will impact the growth of my plant. So I just thought that was interesting. I wanted to kind of share it with you guys. That way, if you are getting a new plant, you kind of know what to look for. Those are important kind of details that are going to help keep your plants healthy. And again, I find it interesting to see kind of the differences in recommendations between different places. For both of these plants, I probably am going to go with a bright indirect light location, somewhere where they don't get any direct sun but are getting plenty of bright light. And I also, obviously for the Adansonii, I will try to keep it in as high humidity as possible. The Scindapsus I think will be okay, just kind of wherever I place it, but we will see. And then I will probably end up watering these, I want to say every 7 to 10 days-ish. I don't really have a set watering schedule. I water when my plants need water. And I know for a lot of people that can be a little complicated. When you have a lot of plants, you try to water on like specific days, or you water them all at the same time. And for a lot of plants, that's not gonna work. You don't wanna overwater plants. Like if you have them in terracotta, they're gonna dry out a little bit faster. But if you have some plants that are in terracotta and some that are in like a glazed ceramic is gonna dry out a whole lot slower. So you just have to keep that in mind. So I will say every 7 to 10 days-ish, and we will just have to see how these plants are at that time. But I'm gonna go probably pop these guys somewhere where I think they're gonna be happy, and you guys will definitely be getting updates. If you follow my Instagram, I will probably be posting some photos of these now that this video is up. I didn't want to start posting and, you know, spoilers and all of that. But if you guys like this kind of video, go ahead and leave me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below if you learned anything about plants, their needs, anything that you might be applying to your plants yourself. I would love to know if you found any of this interesting. And then also there's a subscribe button down there. I do post new videos weekly, and I would love to see you guys around more often. But I think that's it. So thanks so much. Bye.